for. This is what this whole class is about, learning Java, learning the basic functionalities of Java and why we use it now. So why Java? Java is simple. It's almost English-like compared to older programming languages, very similar to English. For example, your variables, you can name them English names, English words for different syntaxes and different modifiers and keywords in Java. They use English words, so that makes it a lot easier. Java is a general purpose programming language, meaning you can use it in many different settings. One of the key tenets of Java is program once, run anywhere. That's because the Java runs on something called a Java virtual machine. We'll talk about that later in a little bit. JavaScript came about as a result of Java, and JavaScript is used on the web to write different programs and functionality on websites. JavaScript is a little bit different from Java in that JavaScript is not compiled. And we talked about it last week, I believe, when we talked about programming languages to a certain extent. But Java is a compiled language, meaning you have to convert it or compile it into a machine-readable language before you can run it. JavaScript, being a scripted language, that's all done once you run it. So if you can imagine, the compiled version is typically faster and more efficient than the scripted version because all of that compilation is not occurring at runtime. So you're not trying to run it plus interpret what's going on. With Java, we already know what's going to happen, just run it. Java and C++. C++ was before Java. Java came out as a result of C++ as well. But Java was created to make programming a little bit easier. You could run Java on any machine, whereas with C++, you were required to know the hardware that you're running this program on in order to code specific statements or code functions that correspond to that hardware. Whereas with Java, you run it, you write your code, and it doesn't matter what machine you're on because Java has something called the Java virtual machine, which is why I wanted to talk about virtual machines last time. Here's the history of Java, created by James Gosling, later merged to Oracle Corporation. Oracle is the current owner of Java, or at least a Java repository, and they're actually suing Google because Java is the main programming language for Android, although Google has developed their own language now. So again, promise, write once, run anywhere. And that's because Java uses the Java virtual machine. And if you recall, a virtual machine is created to run any type of software or operating system on top of another operating system and on top of the hardware. Here are the different JDK editions. JDK stands for Java Development Kit, which is what's necessary in order to code in Java. The JDK is basically all the libraries, all the code, everything that understands what you're writing in one package, one big program. And it allows you to code in Java. In this class, we're using J2SE, which is the Java Standard Edition. The Enterprise Edition and the Micro Edition, they're really used for either large server-side applications and businesses, or for mobile devices such as cell phones, the Java Micro Edition, because it's not as big as the Java Standard Edition or Java Enterprise Edition. On cell phones and mobile devices, you don't want a huge library on those devices because storage is so limited. For those of you who've run out of space with photos, you know what I'm talking about. All right, here is a simple Java program, something that you'll actually do in your lab and in the assignment, something very similar to this. All right, we have our class declaration, public class welcome. That public class, that's necessary in Java in order to create a program, start a program, anything. You need a class to hold everything inside of. And we'll talk about classes a little bit later in this slide. Then you have your main method declaration, public static void main arg string. Your main method is the first method that is run in Java. It's where your program always starts. So where that main method is, anything inside this main method block right here is going to be run first. For example, this print statement is the first thing your program will run. System.out.println, welcome to Java. And what this statement does is it writes to the console. So we did the command line to a certain extent with lab 2, and this system.out.println would print to that console, the command line, welcome to Java. I believe your first program will be hello world, which is pretty much the same as this. It would have the same format, same structure as this example right here, except instead of welcome to Java, you'll put hello world. And if you notice, this block right here has an opening and closed bracket. This block right here has an open and closed bracket. Now this block is within or inside this outer block. Okay, and that's important when we get to variables, but we'll talk about that in another class. Let's have that in mind. All right, compiling Java source code. So our source code is what we write. This program right here is our source code. That program gets compiled or converted into Java bytecode, and the Java virtual machine interprets the bytecode. It understands it. That's pretty much its machine language. And the Java virtual machine is on top of your operating system, and then down here you would have your hardware, right? The reason being is this Java virtual machine is built for different operating systems and different hardware. So that JVM is the only thing that's responsible for knowing what operating system and what hardware your program is running on. When you write your program right here, you don't have to take any of that stuff into account. The Java virtual machine does. And you run your code on top of the Java virtual machine. It virtualizes all of your physical hardware. So that makes Java write once. You can write your program and you can run it on any hardware because that Java virtual machine is in there. That Java virtual machine is responsible for understanding the operating system, understanding the hardware. You don't have to do it as the programmer. So it makes Java a little bit easier. Whereas in C++, you would have to know what hardware you're running. All right, these are the different elements of a Java program. You have comments, keywords, modifiers, statements, blocks, classes, methods, and the main method. These are some of the key elements. All right? Stop me if you have any questions. Something didn't make sense. So here are your different types of comments, okay? You have a line comment, block comment, and a Java.comment. Your line comment is if you want to just put a really quick comment, you know, one line, hey, this method is for this, or this class does this. One really quick comment. A block or paragraph comment is when you want to write a couple lines of information. Hey, this class does this, but it does this in this occurrence, and it could do this if a person decides to do this or whatever, right? You can write all those comments, and I have examples of these as well. Then lastly, you have something called a Java.comment. Very similar to a block comment. You start with that, and you end with this. And if you look over at the block comment, you start with this, end with this. Line comment, you start with 2 forward slashes. But in a Java.comment, there's something called the Java.generator. And what it does is you write your whole program, code it all up, it's a beautiful program. You can run the Java.generator, and what it does is analyzes your whole program and looks for Java.comments. And what it'll do, it'll take all those Java.comments and put it into a text file so that you can just scroll through that text file and say, okay, I know at line 45, there's a method that does this, so on and so forth. And here's an example of a line comment. It's just one line. This is a line comment. Very simple. I can write other things here, but once I start writing here, it's no longer a comment unless I put those forward slashes. Here's a block comment. We open with a forward slash and an asterisk. We close with asterisk forward slash. But you see I have multiple lines of commentary now, right? I can have multiple lines. I can put it as long as I want, as long as I open with that and close with that. That block comment can be as big as I want. Whereas a line comment is one single line. Java.comment, very similar to that block comment before, except you have two asterisks now at the beginning. And again, that Java.generator will pull out this Java.comment after you've created your program and add it to a text file or HTML file. In Java, we have certain keywords. We have class, public, static, void, and several other keywords. But what you need to know about these is they have a specific meaning, a specific purpose in Java, and you cannot use them to name any variables or as a name of anything. Because they have a keyword, they are a keyword, they have specific meaning. For example, class, Java understands that the word after class is the name of that class. So if you look here, public, class, whatever comes after that keyword is the name of that class. Welcome. All right. And all these other words we'll talk about as we go throughout the class, but they are keywords as well, public, static, and void. In Java, you have something, these are keywords as well, but they're also modifiers, meaning whatever data that you put after it is going to be modified by this keyword. So a public means that anybody, any class outside of my program, other programs, can access that class. However, a private class, only my program can access that class. No other program can. That's important if you're working with other people, because say, for example, you know your code is bomb, and you don't want nobody else to touch your code. You can make it private. Hey, you can only get to this using some method. You cannot just change my class. It's already good to go. Don't worry about it. However, you can make a class public, and they can do whatever they want with that class. Other modifiers, static, final, abstract, protected. We'll talk about those later. Final, if I do final variable, then you put the name of your variable, my variable equals 5. That means anywhere in my program, I cannot change that variable. It's final. Final, that's it. There is no changing that variable later. So that comes in handy when you have a main variable or big variable that you don't want anybody to use, but you use it all throughout the program, and you don't want it to be modified except once. You would set it equal to final, and it cannot be modified inside the program. All right, a statement is one single line of executable code. So system.out.println, welcome to Java. Remember, that system.out.println, it prints to the command line or the console whatever you put inside of these parentheses. Right? You do need quotation marks for that. Every statement does end in a semicolon. Semicolon. Every statement. In Java, we have blocks, which again, we saw those earlier. There's an opening brace and a closing brace. Everything within that block is accessible inside that block. For example, this is what we had before, right? our simple Java program. That's the class block, right? The class block, okay? The main method block is inside of that class block. But as you see, there is an open, close bracket for the main method, open, close bracket for the class. Again, all that, the main method block and that statement within the main method block are all inside of that class block. All right, so there are hierarchies to your blocks, and it's important for organizing your code. Okay? Again, stop me if you have any questions. I know I'm going kind of fast, but this is just the intro. We'll dive deeper into all of this in later lectures. And this lecture will be available on the website. All right, classes. They declare the template of any object we will use. They define the characteristics and how to access and modify those characteristics. All right, I always like to give examples because it relates it to something I know. So a class is the on-paper specs of a vehicle. For example, a red 2024 Mustang GT V8, right? That's the spec sheet. I'm looking at all the specs. Well, when I actually get that car, I expect it to follow that spec sheet. Red 2020 Ford Mustang, right? So that's what an object is the actual vehicle according to the spec sheet. A physical red 2024 Mustang. So I've taken delivery of the real car according to that spec sheet, right? That real car has all the same specs that were written down in that document. That's pretty much what a class and an object is. An object is when you actually create it, it's real now, it's stored in data. A class is just the specs of that object, okay? So here is me defining a class. Public class Mustang, again, the name of my class is Mustang. I have a variable color is red, variable year is 2020, make Ford, model Mustang, and that's its VIN number. I've created my class. That's the on-paper specs of this class, right? So now if anybody generates an object, it will follow that same structure. So here, to create an actual object, use the new keyword. Mustang, so that's the name of the class I'm trying to create. I name it something, so that's the name of my variable, right? That's the name of this actual car. Equals new, that's that keyword, Mustang. Now I've just created the actual object. Or instantiated, that's a programming term. I instantiated the object or created it. So now I have a my car object in data. It's a real in data. It has all of these specs for that object. And it has those specs. So my car has those specs. In Java, it's the callable functions that you can retrieve, modify, or delete data. Or say, for example, you have a mathematical equation that you're doing over and over again. You have to calculate the circumference of a circle. And you have to do it 5 times inside your program. Well, instead of writing out that equation 5 times, you just take that code, put it into a method. Inside your program, you can just call that method. So it's just one statement instead of writing that same code over and over again. And by doing that, by having just all of that code into a method, if you make a mistake anywhere, it's not going to be in that code 5 times. It'll just be in that one method. And I'll show you an example of that. All right, so a method. Now, go back to our Ford Mustang, right? We have taken delivery of our red 2024 Mustang. A friend asks what the VIN number is. Well, you can get the VIN number, right? Get VIN number from the vehicle itself or on the spec sheet, right? So you can get it from the object or from the class itself. So if you remember, this is our class. This is our Mustang class. All our variables are present, right? Well, now I'm going to create a method. Public variable get VIN number. Public means it's accessible. Variable right here is whatever is the type that's going to be returned. So whatever this VIN number is right here, I put that right there. My method name is get VIN number. And what I want inside this method to do, just return the VIN number. I want to get that VIN number and see what it is. Right, but I can do all this within the class. And I actually have to define it in the class first. So remember, this is me instantiating my object. We're creating that actual Mustang, the physical Mustang. Now I can use the my car, which is the name of my object, right? Dot get that VIN number. Now I'm actually using that method to get that VIN number. And this would return whatever the VIN number is that I set. Okay? So I can use that method now to get the VIN number from that Mustang. So in Java, I created my object right here. Now I'm actually using the method that was in the class. This method back here. Again, we have the main method, which is responsible for running the program, and it's the first method that is run in Java. So if you can't have more than one main method in your whole program, or you'll get an error. Or it may ask which one do you want to start at. But that is the first line of code that is ran in a Java program. So you remember back to our simple Java program. That is our main method. Public static void main string args. And it will always follow that syntax. Right? It will always be public static void main string args, regardless. Right? That's going to be always your format of your main method. Your main method needs to be inside a class. Right? So you can name this class public class, whatever. Public static void main string args. And then you can have your Mustang car off somewhere else, your Mustang class off somewhere else. Inside this main method, I can say Mustang my car equals new Mustang. Right? And remember your semicolons. Variable VIN equals my car dot get VIN number. Right, that's that method that we created. Right, so now I'm actually using the my car object and calling this method. All right. Then lastly, I can do a system.out. Again, system.out.println prints to the command line whatever I put within the parentheses. Print line. I want to print out this variable right here, the VIN. VIN. Boom. And so now it would print out whatever that VIN number was. But again, you look here, this is our object creation or instantiation. This is our method usage. And then this is our print statement. Okay. And all I'm doing here on this line right here, I'm creating a new little variable called VIN. And then I'm going to set whatever get VIN number right here returns. I'm going to put that return into the VIN, into that variable, so that I can use it within this main method, right? It makes it usable within this main method. And then I took this VIN number variable and I'm printing it out right there. Just run through that real quick again. So the first thing I did was create my object, right? Mustang, my car equals new Mustang. And that my car is the name of my object. So anytime I want to call a variable or call a method, I must use my car. The second thing is I create a variable called VIN, and I've set that equal to my car's VIN number. So my car.get VIN number, right? I set VIN, this variable VIN, equal to my car's VIN number. And then lastly, I print out whatever that VIN number is. I print out VIN. I want it to print to the console so I can look at it and see what it is. All right? Any questions, comments, or concerns? That is it.